Good evening, everyone. It is your girl, Marcy Thomas, and I am so excited to be here with you again for another episode of the BGC Book Club. I actually mixed everyone last week because, of course, it was a holiday, and I figured you would be busy eating barbecue or whatever it is that you do on Labor Day. And so I figured it'd be a good time to take off, but I'm super excited and thrilled to be back with you again. Now, the BGC Book Club has been around ever since April of 2020. So we've been going at this for a while, and it's a wonderful space to share books by, for, and about Black women. Now, tonight's guest, this is actually her third time in the room. So I'm really glad to have her here. We were just talking about next year when she's going to come back again. She knows that she always has a welcome space here at the BGC Book Club, and I've met her in person. So she's also, I would consider her a literary buddy of mine. So our special guest for the evening is Vanessa Miller, who is a best-selling author, entrepreneur, playwright, and motivational speaker. And tonight we'll be talking about her brand new book, The Light on Halsey Street. Now, she started writing as a child, spending countless hours reading or writing poetry, short stories, stage plays, and novels. Her writing centers on themes of redemption, often focusing on characters facing multi-dimensional struggles, and the book we'll be talking about is no different. Her novels have received rave reviews, with several appearing on Essence Magazine's bestseller list, among others. She is an ordained minister and lives in North Carolina with her husband and family when she's not out there on the road as she is right now. So welcome, without any further delay, Vanessa Miller. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, my literary friend, as I call you, literary buddy.
Right. Absolutely.
Yes. So congratulations. I want to congratulate you on your new book, The Light on Halsey Street.
Thank you so much. I am so excited about this book. I'm so excited to be able to talk about it. So thank you so much for having me on tonight.
Oh, yes. And you see, I tried to match up the colors a little bit with my outfit.
You know, I'm always doing, look at my shirt, look at the book. I'm always doing that with my book. So, another one of my books that's going to be releasing, it has flowers on it. So I've already bought,
you already went shopping?
Flowers. I'm terrible with that.
Hey, but it's all about the theme, and it just drives it home. So now this book holds a very special place in your heart, as do all of your books. But this one, actually, there is a personal connection. So what is it about The Light on Halsey Street that really resonated with you, and even wanting to tell the story?
Well, as you know, I'm not from Brooklyn. My husband is from Brooklyn. And he would tell me so many stories about growing up in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, that one day, as I was listening to the different stories he was telling me, I said, I have to write about Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And it just grew in me, like I need to write this story. So I couldn't write his story,
right?
Because I write women's fiction. And so I came up with these two characters, Dana and Lisa, and I began to tell their story of growing up in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. But it was, by him being able to help me visualize the area and just be able to see where I wanted to put the people and things like that. Just by the different things he was telling me, it made a whole lot of difference.
Oh, yes, because Bed-Stuy is really one of the characters in the book. And just based upon the timeline, as I was reading, I'm thinking about, the hip hop, like Biggie Smalls, being from Bed-Stuy or from Brooklyn, about, Jay-Z being from Brooklyn. So oftentimes we have heard through hip hop and even other arenas the stories of men growing up or being in that environment. So it was very interesting and compelling for you to tell the story from a female point of view.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. And so we know we're in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. That's where it takes place. But what's the timeline for those who haven't had a chance to read it yet?
Right. But I like how you just said that Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn is a character in the book. And I wanted to, Dana and Lisa are main characters, but I wanted the reader to feel like Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn is a character as well. They're feeling like, oh my goodness, I know this place just by reading the book. And so I'm so thankful that some of my reviewers are coming back and saying that. So I'm really happy about that. And it begins in 1985. I was a teenager in the 80s, and so was my husband. So when he was telling me the stories about it, of course it was in the 80s. And so I said I wanted to be authentic about it, and about, what I was learning about Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And so I said, okay, I'm going to begin this in the 80s, but I didn't want it to stay there. I wanted this to be a coming of age story that spans decades, because I'm teaching something within these pages of how these women grow up and how bitterness can take a root. But I want to teach a story about, as we get older, how we can become better, bitter, through the circumstances that life throws at us.
Absolutely. And it's real to see people. I mean, a couple things, just the fact, well, we're going to get into it, but that you have two friends that grew up in the same neighborhood, that had two very different experiences of growing up in that neighborhood, whose lives, kind of took different, went in different ways.
Absolutely.
Throughout the story. And, how just things that happen at some time that have happened to you as a young person can carry over, and it shows up in your choices and the ways that you do things as you continue to get older. So all of that was picked up in the story, starting in the 80s and going up to, I believe it ended in 2018, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
So more recent times.
Yes. Go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
What were you going to say to me?
Yes. So just to give us a little tidbit of a little bit about each girl, we can start with Lisa. So tell us a little bit about Lisa.
Well, Lisa is the good girl who grows up in a two-parent household. Her mother and father, they are faithful church attendees. Her father owns the corner store at the corner of Lewis and Halsey. And she works down at the corner store during the summer, helping her father, because they are helping with her tuition, because Lisa is on her way to college. So her father says, oh, well, you're going to help at the corner store. Mm-hmm. And she's just a good girl who's going to do what she's told. But Lisa, as she grows up, you're going to see, I try to turn that on its head, because even though she is definitely, she has a great foundation, but I want you to see what happens when circumstances change in your life and you don't become what you thought you should have. How do you handle those things? Mm-hmm. And so Lisa will answer those questions in the book.
Yes. It's something like when you have this whole plan of what it's supposed to be, or what you think it's going to be, and then something, as you said, kind of spins it on its head, and you're like, well, wait a minute. And I'm just thinking of people that I know, or maybe even times in my own life where I might say, hey, I thought things were going to be this way, or things should have been that way. And
I've said that. Yes. And Lisa was definitely a planner. Mm-hmm. And so she planned out her life. Mm-hmm. And so I plan out certain things, and when they don't go the way I expected them to go, or the way I pray and hope that they go, I'm going, well, wait a minute, what happened?
Right. Well, it's just saying, if you want to make God last, tell him your plans, or something to that effect. Because we plan things, but we're planning, but sometimes there's something else going on.
That's
that
right.
leads us to becoming the people that we're supposed to be ultimately.
Correct.
But for Dana, so she has a different story. Tell us a little bit about it.
Dana is my coming up on hard knocks girl. She grows up in a single parent household. Her mother is addicted to drugs, and they are constantly being evicted. And Dana has a lot of shame in the Bed-Stuy community because of, the way her mother has handled things. And so what she wants is to right the shame. She wants respect, and she goes about getting it in a way that will eventually hurt, someone that she very much cares about. And so then Dana has to deal with that, what she did in order to succeed in life. And so Dana is, I like to say, Dana is my come up kid.
Yeah.
And, and even though the way she chose to come up weren't always, weren't necessarily the best ways, Dana still has a good heart. And I hope that the reader sees her for who she truly is as they read her story.
Yes, yes. I wanted to share this comment again.
Okay.
Life happens to both Lisa and Dana. This is a story of all the feels, clutching your pearls to tears. Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Thank you, Angela. Angela. And hello to you as well, Sharon. Thank you
Hello.
for being here. But yes, it's just something to see that. I mean, it's just so much, because I think even sometimes in families, we can see people can have the exact same circumstances and life turns out differently. So definitely, like in this story,
Yeah.
we can see that within, a peer group or a friend group.
Yes.
So of course you knew that you wanted to write about Halsey Street or Bed-Stuy, because that, to tell part of your husband's story. You knew that you wanted to center two young women in that story. But the process of kind of deciding how it was going to play out, do your characters kind of speak to you as you're writing, or did you kind of plot it out ahead of time and then just write it in as you from there?
Right. I am a plot first,
Okay.
character second writer. I love to plot. Sometimes I feel like, not just feel like, I know, sometimes I over plot because I love plotting so much. So you'll get a story from me, and I think sometimes you're going, wait a minute, whoo, it's whiplash because so much is happening. And that's because I love to plot out a story. And so after I plot the story, then I say, okay, I know maybe the names of the characters that are going to be in the story, but I don't necessarily know them yet.
Right.
And so as I'm going through the story, then I take time to say, okay, who are you? And I say, I know what I said is going to be going on in the general realms of who your family is and this and that, but who are you? And so I kind of, as I'm writing this character story, I'm kind of listening and I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of waiting. And, it's certain things where I may write it and then I have to go back and erase it because I'll say, or I'm feeling that's not her.
Okay.
And so I love the discovery process. The discovery process is to me, the hardest process of writing the book, because I can't necessarily get a good flow until I have really discovered who my characters are. And so, but that's a process.
Yeah, I love that. So it's like you kind of know where they're going to go, and then they kind of work their way through it. So
Yes.
yes. Now, of course, we start in the 80s. And well, if you've never watched before, just so you know, we don't do spoilers here. So we're going to talk about the book without telling you everything that happens in the book, but just enough so that you understand what the story is about.
Right.
So we have these two young ladies who are
Mhm.
18 when when the book starts. They've been friends for several years, and they're kind of hanging out the summer before they would before Lisa would be going away to college. And then, Dana is trying to decide what's going to happen next for her. But in the midst of that, they're also dealing with their parents and the things that are happening with their parents. Because 18 is kind of that space where you're an adult, but you're still not really.
And I don't even think you're really an adult. 18 is the age when you think you're an adult.
Right.
But you still don't really know stuff. You are, still trying to figure life out. And if you don't take the time to listen at 18, I say that's when you're gonna bump your head a whole lot of times that you didn't have to bump your head if you just listen to your mother
Right.
or listen to your father.
Right.
They've been there and they've done that. Take a listen.
Right.
before you run off and do some things that you wish you hadn't have done.
Yes, 18 in the 80s. Yes, and you mentioned it earlier. I turned 18 in 84. So yeah, I know all about that. 18 in the 80s. Oh,
Yes.
okay. I didn't realize we're in the same group. So
Oh
yeah.
yeah, I turned 18 in 1985, and that's when
Okay.
I graduated high school in 1985, just as Dana and Lisa graduated
Okay.
in
Well, I
1985.
1 year. I got 1 year ahead of you all.
Yes. Mhm.
Grown, but not so grown. But yes, it was just interesting, as we've already talked about Lisa, seeing the relationship that she had with her parents, because as you said, she was a good girl and she was trying to do everything that they wanted her to do, but then not always, because
Not always.
there were some things that kind of led to what happens in the story, based upon
Correct.
her not doing some of the things that her parents wanted her to do. But I love the fact that you did include the father figure, because a lot of times we often hear where there's not a father figure, we hear that, but
Mhm.
that's not always the case.
Correct.
And they actually, Lisa and her dad actually had a pretty good relationship that we see evolve over the course of time. So how important was that, or was that something that your husband kind of talked to you about the dads in the neighborhood or not in the neighborhood, or how did that part kind of come up?
Well, since I knew that my husband's father owned the corner store, or
Ah,
at the his father actually did own the corner store at the corner of Lewis and Halsey,
gotcha.
and he worked for his father during those times. And so when I gave Lisa her dad and everything, is because I wanted to represent that this man who owned this corner store, but I also, as you're saying, I wanted to represent a good household that's trying to raise their child right, help her get to her future, because as he was telling me, you know Bed-Stuy was really about community.
Hmm.
And so that's why I deal a lot with community in the
Yes.
book. And it was, a place where, the people watched out for each other. And so I wanted to kind of show that. But it was also because I began it in the 80s. The 80s was also a time that I know of, because I grew up in the 80s, is where the crack epidemic
Right.
began for us. And so I could not be authentic to the story without also telling Dana's story, and with her dealing with her mother having this addiction.
Hmm. So, and thank you, because that's where I was going next. Because it is the '80s, and New York, and it wasn't just New York; it was all over. That
Yeah.
that the
Oh
crack.
yeah, I lived in Ohio at that time, and I had friends where we went to high school together. We all had dreams, and
Hmm.
things that we wanted to do. And the next thing you knew, they were not the same anymore, and it was because of this epidemic that just swept through America.
Yes. And you know what? I actually was in the Air Force at the time. So it's like a lot of it I didn't really personally see, because I was kind of
Hmm.
in a
Yeah,
different
you were kind of
world.
gone. Yes.
Right. I was in a different world. So I was separated from it a lot of what was going on, except hearing it in the news and things like that. So yes, to actually be in that area. We have another comment. A store owner has a master's in people. Yes. Hard
Yes.
won wisdom. A teenager rarely appreciates it. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yes.
That is so true. But yes, so from the standpoint of telling the story, was there a lot of research that you had to do just to understand more about the life of, say, the person who may have been an addict, or was that something you just had recall from growing up in that time,
Oh, I
or a combination?
look, I grew up in the 80s. I didn't have to do a whole lot of research on that. I saw it.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
That was, it was, friends, family, and so that's not, quite funny, because it was just a really it was just a really bad time. It was a good time, And it was a bad time, because we're growing up, we're exploring, we're just happy to be out there, and we're thinking we're grown. But I had a lot of friends who were killed during this time, and these were people I went to high school with and things like that. And then they grow up, and as we were talking about, then you think you're grown, and they're and so life wasn't, to me, as easy as we would like it to have been in the 80s because of the different things that were going on. However, that's why I try to show the two different people, because there were still families who were making it work. There were still families who were, pulling it together and things like that. There were people, and that's why I only show it, with Dana, and her mom's situation. And I don't try to say, oh, everybody in this community was dealing with this, because I know that's not true.
Right.
And so I wanted to show mostly a community of hardworking people, and and people who were just looking out for each other, and they were enjoying each other and enjoying life in the 80s, because that also happened.
That is so true. We have another comment here. I enjoyed the realness and rawness of the story and the journey of both Lisa and Dana over 3 decades. Yes. And
thank you.
Ready accessibility to wider variety. A ready accessibility to wider variety of drugs than in past years. Yeah, it definitely was in that time. And I like the fact of you showing that whole community aspect, because there was a time when communities really were truly communities.
Correct. We don't really have all of that community feel these days. And so the trip back to the 80s, I wanted to show that, there was times when, people could actually whoop your kids if they were out and they were acting a fool. You try that today.
Oh, no, everybody be going to jail. Yeah, you can't do that.
Oh no! It's a different world now, and it is because we don't really take the time to get to know our neighbors, and so then we don't know that anything that they might want to do to help us with our kid is coming from love, because they haven't taken the time to get to know our kids or to get to know us as they did back in that time.
So, of course, we have something that happens, because the book is actually broken down into 3 sections.
3 parts, yes.
3 parts. So in the first part, we're kind of looking at what's happening in the 80s as these young women are, teenagers, and kind of what happens to them. And, we're not going to tell you what. And those who've read it, don't say it in the comments. But some things happen that, let's just say, they separate in their friendship, and they go in their lives, the individual directions of life. And then the next time we see them, it is the early 2000s. Correct?
Yes. So the book begins when they're 18, and that is really my jumping off point for the story, because the inciting incident occurs when they're 18.
Right.
But they don't know this inciting incident has occurred yet. It is not until 15 years later, they're both on with their lives, and then they discover what has happened to one of the characters because of something one of the other characters has done. And I hate to say it's because of something the other characters have done, because some of my readers have told me they didn't know it was her. So
really?
Spoiler. I just did a little spoiler.
Okay. You still got to read it, though, because people are like, who did what, huh?
Oh, yeah. There was a lot more going on.
There was a lot going on. And that is one thing I will say, because when you were speaking a little bit earlier about plotting, there were things going on. So as I was reading, and, I always tell people I read really fast because I have to read a lot. And so I read the book in the space of a day. But as I was reading, I was keeping it like, okay, this one is dealing with this. and this one
Right.
is dealing with that. So really, even though there is like the main thing that's going on, there are
Mhm.
also secondary things that are going on.
Absolutely.
There's also relationships going on all at the same time.
Because they're multidimensional. So
Multi-dimensional.
they're not just, it's not just one thing. Uh, I like to look at it as, we are individual people that, we're made up by several different things,
Mm-hmm.
and not just one thing. And so that's why I try to show several different things, all at once, and all converging together
Right.
to
But I mean,
make
that's life,
to
though.
make this person who they are.
Right. Yeah. And that's life because, we all have jobs, we have relationships, some of us go to church, or in organizations, all of these different things, all these different hats that we wear make up who we are. So we can be in a situation where I think that, what was that book, A Tale of Two Cities, where it could be the best of times and the worst of times at the
Where it
same
could- the best of times and the worst of times. Absolutely.
all at the same time. So, of course, as we fast forward, 15 years later, they would have been in their early 30s.
Yes.
And so what is going on with Lisa at this point?
Lisa is about to step into her dream job, her dream, I don't want to call it job, her dream career.
Yes.
And and she has basically done every step that she needed to along those 15 years to get to right here, this moment where she is about to take over this new agency, and she's living her dream. And then she finds out she can't have this job. It is rescinded because they discover some things on her credit report. And she finds out she is dealing with identity theft, but she has to prove it. And
Right.
so what happens when one thing after the next is happening to you, and it is basically ruining all of the plans you have for your life, and all of these dominoes keep falling down, and you did nothing to make this happen. How do you handle it?
Right.
Are you going to become better? Are you going to rise above this, or are you going to become bitter from it? And
Yes.
so go ahead.
Yeah, and it was something just to see her go through that and just to think of, maybe situations in my own life, as we said, because one thing I tell people all the time, whenever I'm reading, I'm also looking to learn something. I'm also thinking of learning something that maybe, how can I put it, learning something intellectual per se, but then
Mhm.
also learning something that can help me, is who I am. And of course, the type of work that you do, that's what you do.
Yes, yes.
There's always something, a lesson or something to gain from
I
that.
try. I
Yeah,
try my best.
yes, and you do it well.
Thank
But,
you.
but just to think about that, because, well, we didn't say what it was she was doing, and saying it won't give anything away. She was in the social work field, and she wanted to
Yes.
be a helper and be a helper of people. So what
Dana
happened?
Dana loves the to community.
Mhm.
Community is important to her. Her Shirley Chisholm and Elise Richardson, two people from the Bed-Stuy community who helped build that community in the 60s, were people that she idolized.
Mhm.
And she wanted to grow up and do something great for her community as they did. And so, those were her dreams. What
Mhm.
happens when those dreams are shattered? And that's where, did I say Dana? I meant Lisa. And that's where Lisa finds herself there. And so, did you ask me to go ahead and talk about Dana?
I'll have a quick question, and then we can talk about Dana.
Okay.
About the two ladies that you just mentioned, Shirley Chisholm and you said Elaine Richardson?
Elise
Elise Richardson.
Richardson.
I love the
I hope
fact
I'm
that
pronouncing it right. Go
that
ahead.
you incorporated real people into the story
Yes.
that would have served as inspiration to Lisa.
Yes. And that was a part of the research. when my husband first started telling me about Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, because I'm a researcher, of course I'm asking him questions. So I'm jotting down what he's telling me about the community in the 80s that he grew up in. And so then I said, okay, what about this Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn community? So I went and I started researching, and I came across this in the 60s. And it is a fact. And like I say, if somebody correct me if I'm saying the name wrong, because it's been a while. I wrote a whole nother book since then, but Elise Richardson and Shirley Chisholm had invited Robert Kennedy to tour the Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn neighborhood in the 60s, because money was being funneled into other communities, but it wasn't coming into the Bed-Stuy community because it was a largely Black minority community. And so they let him tour and look at all the trash that wasn't being picked up. They let him see the neighborhood, see the conditions of the brownstones that were, see the conditions of boarded up buildings that weren't being in use. They took him to the YMCA, and Robert Kennedy says to them, we're going to do a study on this. After they tell him all the problems, he says, we're going to do a study on this. And Elise Richardson says, we've been studied to death. What we need is brick and mortar. What we need money. And because she was bold enough to say that to him right in that meeting, he then turned around and funneled money into that community. And they began to build that community back up in the 60s. People at that time weren't even able to buy those brownstones because banks wouldn't give them the money to buy the homes. So they then began to be able to buy their homes. They were able to fix up homes. They were able to start businesses from the businesses that were boarded up. They took the boards off, fixed the buildings. Money was funneled into that community. And it was because of those two women had the tenacity to tell power that they needed help in that community. So when I read that, I was like, oh, sometimes I'll see something and I'm just like smiling about what was done. And so I said, oh, I have to tell this story. And so I mentioned it, even though I'm doing a story at the beginning of 1985, I have to mention what was done in the 60s because I thought it was a powerful thing for the community.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing. That's all I wanted to ask because, Brown Girl Collective, we love Black women in history. And many of Shirley Chisholm was the first Black woman to run for president. We know that. So, historically, but the story of some of the things that she was doing on the ground locally.
Yes.
I wanted to make sure that it took a moment to mention that. Now, of course, Dana in the 2000s, her life, she's been through some things, and then leading up to this time. And tell us a little bit about what's going on with her once we come to part 2 of the book.
Part 2 of the book, Dana's in her early 30s and she's in her rebuilding mode. And Dana actually, she begins to become an entrepreneur. And so I'm not going to talk about what happens because I want people to read those parts. But she becomes an entrepreneur. And Dana actually becomes quite successful. And Lisa has even been praying for her that, she would, become successful, that, her life will be turned around. And lo and behold, God answers those prayers.
Yes.
And so now what happens when you discover that this now successful person, now millionaire, but she became a millionaire because what she did in the beginning to start her business affects your life. And now you're having problems but it looks like everything is just sweet for her.
Right.
And this is someone that you once considered like a sister. How do you forgive that?
Right. Right. And I mean, even in reading it, it brings up so much in that just thinking about the fact that a lot of times people have the presumption that if I do everything right, I dot all the I's, I cross all of the T's, that my life is going to be or should be
Yes.
perfect.
Yes.
And the people over there who are doing things that maybe aren't, in the ways that we are told that we should do things. And
Correct.
how is it that this person is, having all the good things happen to them, but they're not necessarily doing the right things?
Correct. It's a hard pill to swallow. It really is, because a lot of times we, as human beings, we look at things like that and we think, well, isn't this interesting?
Mm-hmm.
how is all of this seeming to work out for you? But God doesn't really want us to have our eyes on other people.
That part.
He wants us to, worry about our own self. I
Mm-hmm.
say, if you no, my husband told me this one thing, and I hope I'm gonna get it right. If you spend oh, now I'm gonna get it wrong. He's right here. I really want to ask him. Please tell me, if you spend
4 days minding your own business,
if you spend 4 days minding your own business
3 days staying out of mine,
and 3 days staying out of mine, what's the rest? You won't have time.
Right.
To be in nobody else's business.
Right. But it's so easy. It's so easy to look at what somebody else is doing, Like I was talking to a coworker the other day, and she was, she's on this, health journey, and she's lost some weight, and she's like, yeah, I was around some folks, and they were like, you might be losing too much weight, and it's like, come on now. I was like, they need to mind the business that pays them.
4 days minding their own business, and 3 days what was
out of mine.
and 3 days staying out of mine.
Right.
Trying to worry about nobody else.
You won't have time to worry.
Yay, hubby. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's word right there. That is word right there. To make sure that the business that you're minding is your own.
Is your own.
Yes, and I mean, we can get on a whole nother conversation about that, because we think about nowadays, in present day, social media really drives that.
It does.
Being in other people's business, knowing that they're only giving you the highlights and not telling you the whole story.
They're giving you the highlights. It's like, calm down. Life it's okay for you. Yes, you just saw them on vacation in Europe or wherever they just went. It's still okay.
Right.
It's okay.
It's okay. It's okay. But just looking at that, it's like, it's something to see. And then as that's happening, and later on, some things come out as to what happened earlier on, that's when we get to the point of having to consider how you feel about that person who has, in a way, betrayed you.
Yes.
And how you're going to respond to that betrayal.
Yes.
And especially, I'm thinking of Lisa as a person of faith, who has always been a person of faith,
yes,
as we've seen up to this point. Now it's tested.
Now it is tested, because that is the time our faith is tested. It's not when everything is going exactly as it is supposed to go. That's when we can be this good little Christian, and we can, hallelujah, God is good, because everything is going great for me. And then I'm telling everybody else, oh, well, why don't y'all just trust God? And why don't give it to Jesus? And why are you so worried? And why are you so upset? But you let that right thing happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
Then we find out, are you really giving it to God? Are you really trusting God? Or is it just that, you never had a fire you had to put out?
That's true.
And so this is where, like they say, the rubber meets the road.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I wanted to examine, because I'm saying, Lisa's still a Christian.
Right.
I'm not saying that she's not at all, but now she's got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And now is when she needs to figure out what that Christianity means to her.
Right.
And will she give it to God, or will she, uh, you know, basically try to handle it herself?
Right.
You know how we want to handle it
Right.
ourselves. And
Exactly.
so Lisa finds herself in a dilemma, and Lisa, really gets out of character. But I say, but God,
Mm.
it is, but also I want to show the effects of bitterness and
Right.
what it does. And that's why I began the story when they're 18.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's easy for us to let things roll off our back when we're young, but as we're getting older, and because see, when we're young, we still have the whole world in
Right.
front of us, and we still have our whole life in front of us, and we think, oh, that's no problem. But as we're getting older and things seem to pass us by,
Mm.
do we still have that same faith? Can
Mm.
we still believe that God, still has something good for me, you
Mm.
know, even still,
Right.
and I believe the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe that, we just have to continue to trust. And so I wanted to kind of explore that, and I, of course, used Lisa to explore it. So, of course, I have to run her through the mud in order to do it.
Yeah.
And I apologize to Lisa.
Yes. Yes. We
I
have.
apologize to Dana too, because I
Yeah, they
ran.
both went through it. They both went through it, in that. We have one comment saying, tell hubby you're going to steal that comment, the 4 and the 3. And then, Laura is saying that, the time passes by quickly. So, yeah, you
Yeah.
just don't. But yeah, it's a thing because, yes, whatever that thing is that you wanted, whether it was a career or marriage or family or, whatever it is, it's like a lot of times, kind of back to what we were saying earlier, you got this plan in your mind of how it's supposed to look. And sometimes it doesn't show up when you think it's going to show up. And it doesn't look the way you thought it was going to look when it
Correct.
shows up.
Correct. God has a funny way of doing that to us. We think things are going to be one way, but God already knows, no, that's not even what I have for you. And
Mhm.
and if we trust him, what he had in store for us is so much better than what we had planned for ourselves anyway.
Mm-hmm. And just switching over to Dana for a moment, because of course, she's had this success, and these things are coming up from the past that are, creating some challenges for her. But in the midst of it, one of the reasons that she was able to become successful, because she struggled at first,
Mm-hmm.
is that she meets this gentleman who comes into her life and he helps her. And not that the man is there to save the day, but he does kind of help save the day.
Right.
But I also love the way that you explored how the things that happened to Dana early in her life impacted the way she dealt with Jeff when he
Yes.
came into her life, and how that happens for a lot of us.
Yes. Absolutely. And Jeff was a good guy. And I wanted to show him as just a good man, and she couldn't see it at first. And she did. And even when she did begin to see it, she didn't think he would be for her
Right.
because of all the things she had been through. Uh, she thought, she didn't know if she deserved
Mm.
such a person as Jeff, when he loved her, and he wanted to do the world for Dana, and he wanted to just be there for her, not necessarily wanting anything from her, just, and matter of fact, he became the one to help her at
Mm-hmm.
the times when she began to struggle. And so I wanted to show him like that, because it wasn't about being being her savior.
Mhm.
But I believe that in a marriage, we're supposed to be each other's helpmeet.
Right.
And so, and this was at a time when she struggled, and he was willing to step up and be that help me to her. And if you're married to someone and they can't step up and help you
Come on.
when you need the help, then what's going on?
Right. Right.
I'm
Right.
looking around like then what are we doing here?
Right.
Because we're supposed to be there for each other. We're supposed to care enough about each other to say, what do you need? I got you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one, what do you need? I got you.
Mm-hmm. And it's powerful to see that, as you're saying that, something else kind of dawned on me, the whole thing of help me, because it's like we oftentimes think of the woman being the helpmeet for the man, but in your book, it's showing it can be the other way, and it should be seasons.
It's both ways.
It goes both ways. It's not always the woman giving, and the man not giving in return or in tandem.
That's crazy right there. I'm gonna need I'm gonna need something.
Right, exactly. And that's really how it should be. And I just say, for those who don't feel that, I got words, but I'm keeping them to myself right now.
I'm gonna spend 4 days minding my own business.
That part.
And 3 days staying out of there.
Right, exactly. Okay. Anyway, so all of that's going on. But I just love the way that you explored that, just because I think it's important, for a lot of reasons, the fact of, that sometimes people do carry the things that happen from the past. Sometimes people are dealing with unhealed trauma, and that's real.
And that was Dana. She had a lot of unhealed trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I try to explore that in the book because, even my editor said to me, let's just show the book again because I love the cover, the Light on Halsey Street, coming at you. Go get your copy. Order it tonight. Don't you have a link they could use?
I do. I do. Thank you, ma'am, because I was going to do that. But thank you, ma'am, for keeping me on task.
That's right.
Yes, there is a Brown Girl Collective bookstore just at www.browngirlcollectivebookstore.com. It takes you to Bookshop, and you can find the book there, as well as books from other authors that we have had in this space, and some that are forthcoming. So thank you. Yeah, that was a shameless plug.
Shameless plug. That's okay. We don't mind. We trying to sell books. I'm trying to sell this book
That's
here.
right. That is right.
You haven't purchased it yet.
Yes.
Go get it tonight. You can order it.
Yes.
You want to read Light on Halsey Street. I'm telling you.
Yes,
this book right here teaches lessons.
It does.
And so about the trauma, my editor said to me when I was writing the story, she said, I feel like Dana would still be dealing with more trauma, like even the trauma that I had given her. She said, I feel like she would be dealing with a little more trauma. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know what, you're right. So I even added a little more than I had in the first place, because someone who came out of those different situations that Dana came out of, she's going to feel it. And then when something comes up, that's where panic attacks come from. I believe it's because of trauma that we experience. And so yeah, Dana is one. I'm telling you, my heart bled for Dana. It really did at certain points. And there were times when I'm like, hey, you're gonna do this to her too? I'm like, take your fingers off those keys. Take your fingers off. And so,
I mean, sometimes that's real, because it seems like, what's the saying, when it rains, it pours. And that's kind of what's happening with her. Now, I know we might go a few minutes over only because it's 8:51, but I promise not to hold everyone too much longer, because we do need to get into part 3, which Cleta has asked, and we haven't forgotten, Cleta. Okay. But, just in the third part of the book, that's when we're closer to, about 5 years ago. So to speak. So all this time has passed, different things have happened to both of them along the way. And then we get to, the 20 teens. And so kind of what's happening with the ladies at that point.
In the third part, I explore redemption and forgiveness and how that begins to happen. Now, two things. Lisa needs to learn how to forgive Dana, but Dana needs to learn how to forgive herself. And a lot of issues with Dana in the third part of the book are because she can't forgive herself for what she's done, and she can't find a way out of this cycle that she's created. And there's a part in the book where it says, and I won't say where she's at this time, but it says she wants to believe, but nobody ever showed her how. And that is Dana. Nobody really showed her how to really function, in this world, and and to be able to deal with all the things that she has had to deal with. She's just been walking it out one day at a time through one thing after the next. And there's a lot of people out there like that, and a lot of those people didn't become millionaires as Dana did. I had to give her something. I was like, girl, you're going through. You're not gonna be in the struggle for money.
Right. Yeah, you gotta have something, but
you're gonna have something. You're gonna have some money because you're in the struggle for a whole lot of other stuff.
Right. But even in that, I mean, it just really shows us, kind of back to what we were saying a few minutes ago about these, big influencers or celebrities or whatever. Just because it looked good on the outside, just because people have everything does not mean that their lives are good.
It does not mean their lives are good.
It does not mean that.
The inside, know, and so that's what Dana had to fix, the inside, before she could, before she was about to lose this good man that she had, to lose the respect of the children that she had, because she grew up not respecting her mother, and then she becomes a mother, and then to look in her children's faces, and then they don't respect her.
Right.
That's hurtful. And so Dana had to get this thing right. And Dana, as I say, is the come up kid. And I love a good comeback story.
Yes, so do I.
And so Dana is one of the reasons why I loved writing Dana. I really did. This is a deep story. Yes. It's a lot of issues within this. I know the cover looks real sweet and all of that, and they put all these nice bright colors on the cover. But this is a deep story.
It is
about deep issues. It's about finding yourself again, after you've really lost yourself. It's about discovering who God says you are, after everyone has told you you're something else, and it's about also believing who you are really meant to be. And it's also a story about friendship.
Yes.
And forgiveness. It's a story about two women who learned that their lives were forever intertwined together. And it is how they both begin to do something for their community, do something. And the light, as you begin to read the book, you'll find out who is the light. Even when they didn't act like the light for many years.
Right. Because when I got to the end and then I looked back at the title, I was like, I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
See what you did there.
Yes, that was masterful. I see what you did there.
I tried to do a little something.
A little something in there. Like, okay. But you're just looking at that and seeing Dana, and just how, like you said, she's the come up kid. She goes through a lot, and ultimately finds some things that she needed to find along the way. And then also to look at Lisa and how she dealt with the betrayal, and how she dealt with the pain and all of that, and the things that she has to go through. But there is something in, how can I say this and not give anything away? It also, of course, we know that there is an emotional and a spiritual toll when you are carrying heavy weights, but understanding that there is a physical toll as well.
Yes. Yeah, that's the one we don't want to give away. I want that one to hit the reader like, oh. And I want, this to me is a book that, and Angela Anderson said it when we talked earlier in the week. We did a thing at the bookstore, Quail Ridge Books, and she said, when I closed the book, she said, and I had to sit with it for a little while. That's what I want. And when I was writing it, I knew I wanted it to be a book like that. That when you finished it, you had to sit back, because I want you to think about yourself. If I don't know which person the book is for, for many people, it will just be a book that they think, oh, I love the book, it was a good read. But God has a way of doing things where there's some people that when they pick this book up, it was meant exactly for them. And it is the book that they will sit back and they will go, and it just may save their life.
Come on. That's
and
it.
That is my hope.
Yes, because it is such a powerful story, and there are elements of either or both characters that, as people are reading, they might find themselves in those characters, or somebody that they know, or whatever the case may be, because it is such a powerful story, and there's something to gain from it.
Yes,
for sure. Even with the light, bright, beautiful colors,
yes.
and had some, the subject matter is heavy and deep,
Yeah,
but
it's
it's
weighty.
important.
It's weighty.
It really is. So I want to thank you for being here to talk about The Light on Halsey Street, because it's such a powerful book. As I said, I devoured it just because it was, I got, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next?
You're like, oh my God, what's going on?
Yes, there's living and then there's existing. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, which space are we in? Are we really living? Or are we just existing day to day? So it's something to think about. But I know we've got a few months before it happens. But just real quickly, you have another book coming out in January, which you will be back, maybe not in January, but definitely in February. Tell us just a little bit about that book. And I'm going to come off screen for a second because I want to show them the cover.
Okay.
But you can tell
so that book is titled The American Queen. It releases January 30th, and we will begin doing different type of marketing things very soon to start promoting that book. And it is about the only kingdom that has ever been in America, and they were Black people after emancipation. This book is about King William and Queen Luella. And I say Queen Luella becomes the only queen to reign over a kingdom in America. And I say, long may she reign in your heart as you read her story, The American Queen.
Yes, so we're just giving you a little sneak peek, because as I said, Vanessa will be back. We'll have to check the calendar. If not, at the end. Yes.
Yeah, and it's a true story. This story was written about the kingdom of the Happy Land people. And if you Google it, you'll be able to read information on the Kingdom of the Happy Land. They built their kingdom. They owned land between North Carolina and South Carolina. That's how far their land spanned during that time.
All right. So everybody, you heard it here first. Perhaps if you're not already following Vanessa, and at the bottom you can follow her so you'll get more information. But she and I have already said she's going to be back next year so she can come and talk to us about this book as well. But I just want to put that bug in your ear. So yeah, she got two in less than 6 months. God bless you, sis. God bless you.
I'm gonna need help. I need help.
And I saw a little something earlier that you're already working on something else, aren't you? So yes,
I am. That will be my 2025 release.
Yes. So this sister here stays busy, but Vanessa, as I told you before, you always have space to come here and hang out with us on Brown Girl Collective and BGC Book Club because I love you.
I thank you so much.
Love seeing you, and can't wait to see you again in person when you come to Atlanta as well. So yes, but in the meantime, everybody, and we're going to show you that store, the shameless plug. Go get your copy of The Light on Halsey Street at the Brown Girl Collective bookstore. Yes, as a matter of fact, I'm going to look and see if I can add the American Queen in there because pre-orders are important.
Yes, and they can pre-order now. It's up for pre-order now. So thank you very much.
Yes, so make sure we take care of that. So Vanessa, if you could just hold on for me for 1 second, I'm going to let you go. But you wait for me, but I'm going to let everybody know what's coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye, everybody.
All right. So that was so wonderful to talk to Vanessa again for the third time. Third time is the charm, but third time is not going to be the last time. So just by means of letting you know what's coming up next week, we will be here with Kim Coleman Foote for the book Coleman Hill, which is a fictional story, but also tells some of her life story in Coleman Hill. So look for that next week on the 18th. And then in 2 weeks, the day before my birthday, which is September 26th, we will have How It Happens by Jean Alicia Elster. So be on the lookout for those 2 books coming to finish out the month of September. And I've got some great folks lined up for you for the month of October. And actually, we're going pretty much to the end of the year where we will finish out in December with our kind of wrap up and overview of the year and give away some Winner's Circle prizes to some of the favorite books of the year, books and interviews, which you all will have an opportunity to vote on. So we stay busy over here and just appreciate everyone for your time and for joining us in this space. Please share it out. Please, if you're not watching on YouTube, go over to the YouTube channel, Brown Girl Collective, and please go ahead and subscribe so you will know when all of the new things come up, and also to give you opportunity to look at some of the interviews that have been done in the past, like the ones that we've done with Vanessa previously. So everyone, I thank you for your time, whether you're watching it live or catching it on the replay. You are so very appreciated, and I look forward to seeing you again real soon. Take good care. Bye-bye.